Welcome to Om Times TV, a division of Om Times Media and Broadcasting. Welcome to the Spheres of Spirit with Nancy Myers, aka the Lady of the Light. Nancy will discuss the everyday magic and wisdom of spirit which surrounds each of us, waiting to be discovered. She will share some of her remarkable orb photos, proving that our angels, guides, loved ones in spirit, and even pets surround us and guide us in our physical world. During this episode, Nancy will discuss one of the many spheres or aspects of spirit available to us based on her orb photography. She will also share a special channeled message from her guide, Leonini, and do an oracle card reading to help guide you along your personal spiritual adventure. And now, here is your host, orb photographer, author, medium, and speaker, Nancy Myers.
Hi, welcome to the show. Thank you for spending time with us today. I am your host, Nancy Myers, and I want to welcome my special guest, Elizabeth Best. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm well.
Well, thank you. Welcome to the show. Elizabeth is here because we are going, we are going to talk about a side of math. Now, I've talked about numerology, I've talked about sacred geometry in my shows, but what I heard about and what Elizabeth does, I think if I'm naming this correctly, it's spiritual math. Is that correct, Elizabeth?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I had never heard of spiritual math, and I was fascinated by it. And so I contacted Elizabeth. I did have a session, which we'll talk about with Elizabeth, and we will share that. But before I get into this, I want to bring up the first photo, if I can, Chris. As you know, I always share a picture of one of my orbs, and this one is a special green orb, and I love what's happening in the middle of it. It's a pretty recent orb. But the quote that I attached to this was by Pythagoras. And Pythagoras said, "Numbers rule the universe." And the more I get into the meaning of numbers or how numbers can be used, the more I find this statement more profound. Um, one of my past guests, who was a numerologist, she said, numbers were given to us by the gods. And when you find out the what the power of the numbers that are waiting there for us to unlock it, you believe that they really did come from the gods. Thank you for that, Chris. So I do want to talk a little bit about Elizabeth. And Elizabeth has a master's degree in psychology from Houston Baptist University. She studied portrait art, which I hope we have time to talk about that at the end. And she was first introduced to spiritual math in the 1980s. So, Elizabeth, thank you. And again, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, we are honored to have you. So we talked during my session a little bit about how you got started in this and how math came into your life. Now, I profess math and I don't get along at all. I barely got through geometry and algebra in school, but the power that's behind it is simply remarkable to me. So, how did you find this, or did it find you?
I think it found me. That would be most appropriate.
And
In the,
how did that occur?
well, in the 80s, I had a lady call me, and she had finished this schooling, and she asked if I would come and let her work on me. And it was using math. And I thought, well, this is interesting. So she would get in your fields and she would do circles and she would say numbers. And
Oh,
I
she would say them.
say numbers and as she circled in your fields.
Hmm.
And I thought that was interesting. I did notice some difference in me. Uh, um,
Right away, or you
well,
say you
yeah,
noticed?
immediately. And I looked at going and getting a degree, getting that information and going to that school. But I decided to go get my master's degree at the same time because it was just that would give me more of a psychology basis to understand people before I got into this.
Okay.
So the next encounter was when I had my store and I was being bombarded by people that didn't understand me. And I was just being like slam dunked every 5 minutes. And
What kind of store?
I had a little fairy store.
Oh, okay.
I did healing and fairies and all in the same building.
Oh,
Um,
awesome.
it was fun. And I was kind of bored in my life, so I decided I'd just go get something silly. And then it blossomed hugely, for sure. But they did not understand me in this little country town, and they just hit me and hit me and hit me and hit me. And I was getting very upset and frustrated. And so one day I just sat still and I went, there's something I'm missing. There's something here. I've always been promised I would be taken care of and watched over
By
and
the spirit world?
by the spirit world,
Mm-hmm.
all kinds of promises.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm the dumb one here. So I remembered the promise that within 200 yards is an answer to your problem. No matter what, you have an answer. You
Was
just need
that a message given to you by spirit that the
in the
answer is
Bible.
always within 200 yards?
Yes, that is
That's really
actually.
interesting.
So I sat there and went, okay. So I got into the store and I started tearing it apart to find out where's the answer? Where's the 200 yards? Okay, let's shrink it down. And I ran across a little book that I had bought at a psychic fair sometime before then, obviously. And when I opened up that book, my life changed.
Wow.
and it was on numeronics was the name of it. And it was a little paperback, $20. And it had all kinds of numbers in there for dealing with what I was dealing with. So in a matter of a few minutes, I changed my world. So
So when you say it had numbers in it, and it was called numeronics?
numeronics is the name of the book by Rick Ferguson.
Okay. And so would you find then, was it broken down? Because I have a book I'm going to talk about later here by a Russian mathematician.
Gorovoy. Yeah, a Gorovoy.
Yeah.
I use this
And
stuff all the time.
oh, okay. So you're familiar with it.
Yes.
And what he did, well, let's talk about this now. What he did was he broke down the number sequences according to, let's say you had an ulcer or a cancer, and he'd list all the numbers. So is that what that book did? And you found what? That you were being attacked? So
Psychically attacked, yes.
it then when you found that in the book, it would give you a sequence of numbers, and what do you do with that sequence of
I
numbers?
did everything. I put it behind pictures. I put it under little fairies. I put it in every drawer. I had it in my shoes. I had it in my bra. I had it
Oh,
everywhere, those numbers.
so you wrote them down
Mhm.
and kept the sequence close to you. Did you also say it verbally?
Yes.
Okay.
Screamed it would be more like it.
And then
Mm.
how long did it take for you to see, you said your life changed almost instantly?
Well, it did change instantly because I was no longer afraid of these psychic energies coming at me. I
Mm.
figured out how to neutralize them and just ground them.
Ah, okay.
So, yeah, just saying it just stopped them. Just saying the numbers. So I had covered my entire store. Everybody used to tease me about you couldn't open anything without numbers flying out. You know?
So
But
this really resonated with you,
right.
this numbers. So then what did you do? What was the next step then? I mean, here you found this book, but there must have been more, because I know
Well,
there
I
was.
used it in my healing, of course, and played with it a lot and just had a great time with it. And one day, this hobo looking thing walked in my store, and he was the most unusual. He definitely looked like a reject from Walmart.
Hmm.
His clothes, his everything. And he says somebody in Colorado had told him to come check on me. And I thought, well, this is interesting.
In Colorado.
Uh huh.
And where were you located?
Texas.
So he came all the way from Colorado to Texas.
He
That's
on his trip through he traveled the world, but on his trip through, he stopped in Texas to meet me. And he was a little arrogant. And I told him, I said, I'm Southern. We don't put up with that. Yeah. So why are you here?
yeah.
You know? And I said, by the way, what is in that pocket you have right there? And he goes, oh, nothing. I went, no, 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 no. A Texas girl. I am curious what's in your pocket. So he pulled out a card that had Gematria 4 square on it for illumination. Highest illumination was the one. And the number, the pocket was doing this. And I couldn't ignore it.
Oh, wow. So
And
it was calling to you, or
oh yeah, it was
okay.
flashing me. It was this, I mean, I couldn't see him for the flashing.
Wow.
And he pulled it out and he says, I don't show people this. This is very high energy. And I went, well, I'm not telling anybody. Not today. What is that? And he goes, what are you feeling? I said, it's something new in my world and you need to pull it out and show it to me.
Wow.
So he did. And he was a very strange man. He wanted to sell me rocks. There was a rock shop right behind my building. I said, the rock shop's back here. He's wonderful. I'll introduce you. And he goes, I'm supposed to deal with you.
Huh.
And I went, okay. Be nice.
Wow.
Because you don't know, a stranger walks in, you don't know.
Yeah, especially
So,
one that says he was sent to you.
right.
Mhm.
And anyway, time moved on. And he said, I'm instructed, I'm supposed to teach you how to do this. And you're the only person I've been told to do this to. I went, on the planet? And he went, yes. And I went, oh, that's strange. So we spent quite a bit of time teaching me how to do Gematria, um, which is, assigning numbers to the alphabet.
I looked up for our audience because when you first told me, you said, have you ever heard of Gematria?
Right.
And I said, no, I don't know what Gematria is. But so this is what I found out, and please correct me. But Gematria is an alphanumeric code where letters and words in the Hebrew alphabet are assigned numbers. That's values or calculations. It's used commonly in the Jewish culture to understand text, particularly within the Torah, on a more spiritual level. This type of coding practice was thought to be first used back in the 8th century BC. And since then, it has been adopted by the Jewish culture, and similar variations have been used with the Greeks. Arabic and English have then evolved. The concept of Gematria
Yeah.
stems from the idea that mathematics is the universal language of nature, and within it may be the keys to explaining our universe or evidence of spiritual power. When I read that, I went, wow. So that story that you just said, now I have goosebumps about it literally glowing. And the quote of Pythagoras that I shared at the beginning, kind of makes sense. I did look up though, what is the difference between numerology and gematria? And numerology, as a general definition, is the study of numbers. In biblical terms, numerology is the study of how numbers used in scriptures have a symbolic meaning, like the 12 disciples, 12 tribes.
Sure.
But the difference between numerology and gematria, in simple terms, is that gematria is the practice of assigning a numerical value to letters and words, and to reveal hidden messages, meanings, where numerology is the study of numbers as they are to decipher their symbolic meaning.
Correct.
I hope that was clear for the audience because I didn't know what the difference was. When I first learned about numerology, I thought it was, okay, the study of numbers. But this is a practice that you do that is unlike numerology.
Right.
So this little odd hobo, this traveler, so then did you begin to study with him?
Yes. Yes. We met once a week and for years.
Really?
Yes. And he opened up so much for me for information. And he was just amazing. So many things that he tried to teach me just went, I'm sorry, I'm just now getting it. This
Wow.
many years later, I'm going, oh, yeah.
And how long ago was this,
He
Elizabeth?
died 5 years ago. So um, 15, 20 years ago, he started with me,
Wow. Just walked in your store
walked in the store.
and said, I'm here for you.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
I live in a wonderful, magical world, don't you?
Yeah, we sure
Every
do
day,
when
yes,
when
do.
we're open to that.
Yeah.
So, then studied with him obviously for years and years, but there was some other people that you studied with, yes?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I studied with Rick Ferguson first. Nancy, I studied with her.
Nancy
Um,
Adams?
Adams. Yes, she passed on. And Rick Ferguson. We were in that Ascension group in Houston. Did a lot of study with Ascension. That was an amazing group in Houston.
So when you say you studied with Ascension with these people, Were they trying to how do you define ascension? Were you trying to reach your higher spiritual level? Was that
Yeah.
ascension? Through numbers?
Well, numbers came later. But yeah, it was really important part of my life, that ascension group,
Uh-huh.
because of the people I connected with and got to enjoy and get to know their uniqueness. I discovered Shinar Douglas there with her pictographs of sacred language of light. Those are amazing. I still use those to this day.
Mhm.
She is now in Australia. Um, I
So you studied these, and as it's my understanding, these were people that were kinda looking for a new way, a new modality of healing, yes?
right.
And it sounds like they tapped into something very ancient. I don't know if they actually knew that or didn't know that, but how was it used? How would they teach you to heal then? How do you go about that?
Um, well, I've known how to heal since I was a child.
Oh, okay.
My mother knew how to heal,
Really?
so it was just natural. So it was just part of it. She would go and take a nap and come up and go, "I'm supposed to do this, this, and this," and the people
Oh,
would get,
almost like Edgar Casey.
yeah, just this, and this, and okay, mama, and so it was common in my home.
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't unusual. Even as a kid, I would go up to somebody and go, "It was so nice to see you and get to know you, and you're leaving. You're leaving, and I just wanted you to know, thank you for being in my world." And no matter how many times mother spanked me about that, I still would do it.
When
But
you said you were leaving, were you telling them they were gonna depart from the world?
yes,
Oh, wow.
um,
Wow.
so I just knew, you know, and I was prompted. I was just pushed by spirit to talk to them. And mostly they just looked at me because they were elderly. I was in a small country town, very elderly people,
Uh-huh.
and they just listened. And I had always drawn their picture and gave it to them, because I wanted to remember them.
Wow.
And,
So you've had this gift literally your whole life, and
yes,
it sounds like it was handed down
it was.
ancestrally.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So when you learned about this, gematria, I'm never gonna be able to say that right.
Yes, you will.
Okay. Did that really catapult you then into, um, stepping out more and doing more kinds of healing? Or tell me how this all folded into what you were already doing.
Well, Waris is the guy that taught me how to do it. He put me through quite a bit of grueling questions about what I would do with it. And I said, the only thing I'm interested in really on this plane is healing. So if I can do this with healing, then I'm interested. If not, then go find somebody else. Because, and the more I get into it many years later, the more fascinating it becomes, because of the way you can take a person's name and move it in with whatever's going on with them and ask that that be removed from them.
Mhm.
So, and
A
it can only apply to that one person. So,
and Waris, you said Waris, and he spelled his name Waris?
yes.
Waris? This
Well,
was the man from Colorado who had
this
the
well, he was originally from Pakistan. He was
Oh, that's what I was gonna ask you.
Arabic.
Okay.
He was Arabic. Mhm.
And so he did he ever explain to you how he came upon this modality himself?
Yes, he started going through all of these bookstores and all of these ancient places, and he would come across these ancient texts, and
In Pakistan?
all over.
Oh, all over.
He
Okay.
he was a world traveler. There's no doubt about it. He'd find a lot of them in Iran and different places, odd places, that he would find these ancient books, and he would bring them to me. They were all falling apart and very interesting books. And from
Wow.
that, he carved out how to do Gematria. And he said it was written unless you were brilliant, you would never figure it out.
Huh.
And he thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Because when I looked up the definition of that word, it said that the Jewish culture had been assigning numbers to their letters for a very long time. And when it was spoken, that vibration of speaking those numbers in sequence, in a certain sequence, emitted a frequency.
It does.
And it was the frequency that you would need either to heal or to take off negative energy or I had a guest once too, Elizabeth, and she heals with sound.
Oh,
She's a
yeah.
sound alchemist. But when we speak, when we think, it's so powerful, the sound of our voice. And I was told once that in the Sophia Pistis, I think it's called, um, Jesus left instructions of how to raise our vibration through using vowels. A, E, I, O, U. And he gave us the sequence of how to say it. So our voices, in pronouncing either numbers or vowels, really produces an effect.
Mhm.
So when you, let's say you have a client, me, because I had a session done. Tell me how you go about healing or what are the steps? How do you discover this? How do you assign the numbers? Because to me, it was fascinating what you did.
I used numbers that I had already developed with you, and I had combined them with pictographs. And so we did it like that. But what do I go? How do I approach it?
Well, let's start at the beginning. How did you assign numbers to me?
I sat down with your energy, and then I started asking questions. And then I would sit still and wait for them to tell me.
The
And
answer or the number?
a path to go,
Okay.
a path that was doing it.
Okay.
So once I wrote that down and I went through my stuff and looked to see what would be good for that. So, but yeah, this is all spirit directed. I don't even take a step without asking spirit. Um,
Yeah, it sounds like you work very closely with your team.
yes.
And and so when you sat down to get my numbers, is there a certain amount or do you just is it a range? And how do you know when to stop or when you have enough? I know again, probably spirit goes, okay, you're done. But how
Well,
many numbers does that usually produce in step one?
in step one, usually 3 or 4 different ways of going at it. Like with you, I started with anything negative hanging around you. And remember, I did it with Hebrew.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put you on a Metatron cube, remember,
Mm-hmm.
on top of the harmony boards, which purify all crystalline structure. And then we just moved from there. We started adding in sacred geometry, and we used selenite and shungite on
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah, and shungite came into my life shortly after that, which was
Oh,
really
good. What a
interesting.
joy.
I wanna talk a little bit more about the tools that you have incorporated because you've gone beyond just the numbers,
Oh,
but
yeah.
we have to break, and so when we come back, I'd like to talk about some of the tools and the ways that you incorporate those tools. Again, it was fascinating to me. I'd never had anything done like that. So we'll be right back.
Okay.
Om Times TV. The story told in Entering the Light Fantastic, Discovering Life After Life Through Orbs, is about Nancy Meyer's spiritual and emotional rising from the devastating ashes of loss caused by the sudden and unexpected passing of her son Robbie. Just like the legend of the reborn phoenix, Nancy's life purpose and focus was transformed. With the help from her son in spirit, Nancy found herself providing proof through orbs that our souls do not die with our bodies. In her second book, Encircled by the Light Fantastic, A Deeper Journey into the Light with Orbs, Nancy continues chronicling her path of gaining spiritual knowledge and expanding acceptance of what is possible, while traveling to many sacred and ancient sites around the world. She shares these experiences with you along with her photographs of remarkable spirit encounters. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
Is it time yet?
It's time.
Mom's starting time for dinner.
Oh, it's Rebecca.
Pasta dinner!
Donating pet food is one of the many ways you can help families in your community. Pets and people belong together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
And we're back. So, we talked about how having a session with you, how it starts. And first you assign these numbers that you get with your team. And then you incorporate some pretty fascinating tools. So
Yes.
tell us some of the tools that you use in your healing work.
Well, let's just look at a few. These are the Tesla coils. And you can get these, just order them. There's like $35 for this, but you can do anything with this.
Ah, okay.
You can do anything with it. Like if
And
you got negativity on a scarf, you could run it through it and clean it, and all the negativity is off of it. Anything
So-
you can do, like a ring, anything to clean it, because it's all positive.
So it's a cleaner. It's
It
a
is very
energy
clear.
cleaner. Okay.
Put it on people's chakras and they go explode,
Wow.
you know.
Wow.
So I can do that, and then I can come back for the number for that chakra and clean up somebody's fields really quickly. There's a few here I picked real fast.
Okay.
This is the galactic fire. Isn't it fun?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing what this can do.
It almost looks like an atom, the diagram of an
Almost.
atom.
it
Yeah.
does. I just grabbed a few.
And so is that also like a energetic cleaner?
This is amazing what this can do.
Okay. And you can use these remotely like you'd used on
Yes,
me.
remotely or on direct.
Okay.
This is another one of the fun things I play with. Isn't that pretty?
It looks like the flower of life.
It is the flower of life, but it's twisted metals.
Yeah.
You don't find it like that very often. The twisted metals is what puts a positive charge on it.
And that's a pretty powerful sacred geometry
Yes.
form. So
Yes, so they
and-
took that and twisted the metal, so it made it a lot more powerful.
and those are made out of copper.
Yes, this
Okay.
one's silver. This one's
Okay. So what you do then is, I think if I remember, is you write down my numbers and you spread them out, and then you use your tools then to assist you in. Now, I got to tell the audience, when I had the session with Elizabeth, I work really hard on keeping myself clean and dealing with, stuff, it's a constant effort, but I thought I was in pretty good shape. And Elizabeth asked me, she said, "What do you want to work on?" I go, "I don't know, whatever comes up. I think do a pretty good, darn good job." But when you finished, I noticed detectable lightness.
Right.
I felt like there was weight taken off. And at the end, I told Elizabeth, I can't stop smiling. I didn't realize that I was carrying all this.
Most people don't.
No, you don't. And wait till you hear my message today from my guide. But we don't realize, I think, how much stuff we pick up and how much stuff we have to deal with on a daily basis. It's
No, we
just
have
like
no clue.
you saying in your store, that people were attacking you, and that's cumulative sometimes.
It is.
So, I want to talk a little bit, if we can. You mentioned briefly the magic squares.
Yes.
Tell us about the magic squares.
Well, Gematria is wonderful that you can take anything and make a number, right? So you take the number and then you through it through a mathematical system, and then you put it into a grid. And the magic squares is a grid of the elements. Each one of those 4 squares has an element, and it's a specialty element. Nowhere can you find how to do these grids.
Well, I had never heard it. Is this
No.
something that Waris taught you?
Yes, how to grid them.
Uh-huh.
You can get whole numbers and you can share whole mathematical numbers from now to eternity. But when you grid them, you get a different frequency out of that number. Each grid has a different frequency. And so with the 4 squares, if you wanted protection for your place, just take a thing and
Okay.
we did a number about protection for your address and all of that. And then we took it and got the number, and then we would do all the mathematical crunching and statistic stuff, and then we would print out a grid. And one of the things you could do with that 4x4 is you can take the one that's marked air and put it in the air, hang the grid in the air, and then the next one is fire, and you burn it. The next one is water,
Uh-huh.
put it in the water, and the next one is you put it on earth to accomplish what you want to do with that grid for protection.
Okay.
And
Or clearing?
or clear, you can do it for anything. I just picked protection.
Okay.
You
Okay.
can do it for anything. You're never limited.
And those numbers that go into that grid are unique to your client, to each
Yes.
client. So it's not something that you mass produce.
No.
So you mentioned to me about the magic squares go all the way back to Ben Franklin.
Well, way past that, but he loved magic squares. He understood the connection between the math and the deeper meaning of the words because of the math. And also, math goes back to creation. So this math takes you back to creation. So he was fascinated with that.
I think Ben Franklin was a very enlightened being. But I did look up the Ben Franklin and the magic squares. Now, for clarification, what Elizabeth is talking about, kind of like a Sudoku puzzle,
Yeah.
where you fill in. And so let me just share this with the audience. There are different theories as to the history and development of magic squares. It seems almost certain that they were first used in China several thousand years ago. There is a story of a Chinese emperor. His name was Yu, sometime around 2000 BC, who, while walking along a river, saw a turtle and the pattern on the turtle's back. inspired him then to do that, a magic square pattern and the numbers. It's interesting how we get our inspiration.
It
There's
is.
a fun story too, kind of similar, about how Reiki started. The guy was sitting on the mountain and this inspiration came to him. So
Sure.
I love these stories. But from there, the magic square spread to India, where in India they said that these squares have magic abilities. They kind of discovered that, including the power to find missing people, ensure safe travels, cure illness, even to predict the future. That's why they're called magic squares.
Right.
But eventually, the use of magic squares spread elsewhere into Asia, Africa, Europe, and beyond. But it's almost like they said Ben Franklin was the one who brought it here.
Well, he did. He brought
Yeah.
it from France.
Yeah. Yeah.
He
And,
did.
and he was brilliant. I
Mhm.
mentioned the Sudoku. What is that? 3 numbers, 3, 6, 9, 12, whatever that is. He did a square that was 16, and they all added up to the same number, no matter which way you added it and which column. I mean, and he said he did that one day because he was bored. I said, "Are you kidding me?" You know, but that's the power of numbers again, the magic of numbers, right?
Right.
And so you harness that.
Well, it allows me to play with it. Harness.
So I've talked a little bit about my healing that I had with you.
Uh-huh.
Do you have one that you can share with the audience that just made, without using names or anything, that just you saw a remarkable difference?
Um, well, yeah. Okay. Recently, I had a girl come in, huge migraines, and she's oh, in her 50s, had never married, never had children. Um, Very strong person, but really had these huge migraines, and she
Mm,
was in a lot of stress as well. And I just looked at her and I went, "Well, we're going to have to just start from the very basic and go from there." So I took my neutralizing sphere that I made and I ran it over her to neutralize as much as I could before I got busy. Because if I can get rid of a whole bunch of junk, then I don't have to work as hard.
mhm.
So we did that, and then I took her out to my tall pyramid generator and stood her under there and took my Orbis, which I showed you my Orbis, and cleaned off everything I could clean off of her because she had a lot of stuff hanging on her. And then I brought her in and just started scraping her down. And I did that with a lot of these tools.
Mhm. And how did the numbers come into this? The same way?
When I got that done, I started cleaning different sections of her body, like starting with the auras. Now I have started making them repeat the numbers behind me
Ah, okay.
because it works faster. It goes deeper into their bodies. And so that has come along in the last year. So when I started doing the numbers, I had her repeat them right behind me because the girl was very much a victim. So I had done those 64 things of victimhood. So we had her doing all the victimhood numbers. And she looked way different when she walked off that table. In fact, she looked years younger.
Wow.
But yeah,
And her headaches are gone?
well, she does have occasional migraines, and she is instructed to call me immediately because I'm studying this. And
Uh-huh.
she was the oldest of 5 children. I was the oldest of 5 children. I understand the hell they went through. And so I give her a lot of leeway. But she's amazing. She's doing well. She keeps me informed.
Oh,
Her
good.
migraines are not as bad as they were, and there's not as often as they were. So,
Yeah. And that's what I tell people, because when I do Reiki, I say, it's not a one and done kind
right,
of thing. Sometimes it takes a little bit of work. But I love that you reminded me, because you gave me a number sequence to say.
right,
You give us homework to keep it going and
right.
to keep it fresh. I do want to talk about two things before we run out of time. First, I promised that we would talk about what is the soul portrait work that you studied. I think that's fascinating.
Well, Author Due, he was just an incredible spiritual man. He was such a gift to this planet. And I just mentioned that I was hungering to do artwork.
Hmm.
So he invited me over, and we did a lot of portraiture work. First of all, we started with me just scrambling with different colors and stuff because I'd never had an art class in my life. And pretty soon I was doing portraitures.
Wow.
And not great, but improving all the time. So he taught me how to look into a person and be able to put it on a piece of with pastels. I was using pastels, and how to put that into the portrait to tell
So,
them the story about themselves.
so what differentiates a portrait from a soul portrait?
Well, a soul portrait has guides and teachers in it. It has sacred geometry in it. It has all kinds of very different things in it.
Ah, okay.
So
So that fit right in with what you're doing,
right, right,
right? You
it
know.
did, it did, and I had a great time studying that, and played with it. Sometime he wanted me to travel with it, and it just was never going to work for me.
Oh, okay. Are you able to incorporate that into any of your work? Do you ever
Sometimes,
sometimes?
like if I'm worried about somebody, I'll draw their picture, and then spirit will start talking to me about what to do with them and stuff.
Okay. Okay.
If I'm confused. Usually, I'm not confused. I usually know right away what to do.
Yeah, you knew exactly what to do with me, and I went, "Oh, no, not really," and then I went, "Oh my god, I feel so much better."
Well, we just get used to feeling not so great and thinking that's normal.
That's
It
true.
isn't. It isn't normal.
Which leads me into my next thing that I wanted to touch on before I let you go. When I had my session with you, you talked about, okay, we have brain cells, but we don't think with our heart anymore. Tell me about the brain cells and the heart brain cells
And the brain cells in our gut, our
in our gut.
abdominal
Yeah.
brain. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're not supposed to use this brain for what we use it for. It is supposed to be something where you have fun and you read and you go play in the water. And I mean, that's what this head brain is for. And the brains in your heart is for you to direct you on your path. And the one in your gut is to run your life.
Hmm.
Mm,
And to me, that makes so much sense because that's our psychic center, right?
yes, it's supposed to run your life. And we do everything with our head brain cells, and it's overusing our brain. And it just gets clogged up and confused, and we think we're confused, and it has nothing to do with what we're doing. It's how we're doing it.
So
So,
does science know, do we literally have brain cells in our heart and our
oh
gut? We
yeah,
do.
we do. We have brain cells all over our body. These are the big groupings.
Wow. So,
So,
when I first started on this path, people would say, well, drop down into your heart and think with your heart, and I go, I don't think with my heart. I think with my brain.
right.
But when you try to activate that or utilize that, boy, it is a different way of looking at things.
Oh, absolutely. Much better, much healthier way
Yeah.
to do things.
Yeah. I think it comes from a higher perspective. And then, like you said, and how many times during a meditation and you go, okay, I really don't know what it is I'm supposed to do. And people would say, well, drop down into your gut. What does your intuition say? Well, I didn't know why we were supposed to do that. It's because we literally can think with our intuition. Yes.
Yes, we can.
Wow. That to me, that was fascinating.
Well, it is. We should understand we're a lot more complex than we think.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we have a lot more going for us than we think as well.
I agree with that. I think we have lost so much knowledge along the way, and we are now coming into an age where we're starting to ask questions because things don't add up. They just don't add up, and so we're looking for new modalities or new ways or expand upon what we know, because I think we've been limited by whomever or whatever for a very long time.
We've been programmed,
Hmm.
and we have to deprogram at this point.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
I would, and that's part of my message to everybody is just ask questions, just be curious, just, start looking at things with, well, is that all there is, or could there be more to this?
Yeah.
Expand your boundaries. And when you do, what a world that you find.
No kidding. Much broader, nicer world.
Yeah. So you have been doing this work for, gosh, over 30 years.
Yes.
And I applaud you. I thank you for your service. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you, what is the best way to schedule a service or to let you know that they would like a session with you?
Email.
Okay. Just send
I've,
you an email. Okay. We will put your email up for you,
okay.
but I have to ask you, it's Pishif,
Bishop. Best.
Pishiff, PISHIFFBEST
Yes.
at gmail.com. Where did you get that name?
When I was a teeny little thing, my grandparents would say, "What is your name?" And I'd go, "Bishop." I couldn't say Elizabeth, so it stuck.
Oh, okay.
Brought it back after my grandparents. As a child and a young adult, I just was horrified at the name, but they consistently called me Bishop. So when they died, I missed it. So I brought it back and started
Oh,
using
okay.
it. So yeah, Elizabeth was a big word.
Yeah, that is for a little mouth and
Yeah,
tongue to pronounce.
it got
Elizabeth.
Bishop
Yeah.
every time. Yeah. So yes.
Um, so if we can bring up that last picture, Chris, this is my final picture of, and this is by Ben Franklin. And he said, "What science can there be more noble, more excellent, more useful for men, more admirably high and demonstrative than this of mathematics?" So, and that was a very recent orb. It almost looks like the Vesica Piscis, where it
Mhm.
combines and splits. Again, that's sacred geometry. So I just got that one last week. So I thought I would use that one. So thank you, Chris. So again, I think Ben Franklin was not from this world. I think he was an ascended master. One day, I will share with the audience. I sit in a channeling group, and every once in a while, someone special comes in, and I'll channel. Now, my audience knows that I channel my higher self, my higher guide, but sometimes celebrities come in, and Ben Franklin has been in twice.
Oh, you are so lucky.
Yeah, and his messages were profound. Maybe I'll read that on another show, but when you listen to his words or you really study what that man was about, or what he founded and how he wrote and what he did, he was so far ahead of his time.
Oh yes.
Just like Nikola Tesla, another hero of mine, or of course Mr. Einstein, and there's so many. But I think these souls agreed to come in to kickstart us,
Right.
to do that. So Elizabeth, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. It was fascinating to listen to your explanation on spiritual math and how can be incorporated into our lives. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. We'll have you back again. Okay,
Good.
take
Bye.
care. Okay, audience, don't go anywhere because I wanted to tell you two things here. I mentioned this book, and Elizabeth and I talked about it. This book is called Practical Guide to Using Number Sequences of Grigory Grabovoi. I know I'm brutalizing that name, and there's his name. He was a Russian mathematician, and he discovered this number sequences, certain sequences can cure certain things, cancers, depression, liver disease, you name it. And so there is another book out by him, but this book was like a workbook that was developed. You look up the disease, and he will give you the number sequences, and you can write them down. You can write them on the palm of your hand. You can write them on a piece of paper and put it in your pillow, but just to get that vibration. This book just came out in 19. Grigori's book came out in 2011. His credentials in this book take up 6 pages. So he is a brilliant mind, but if you wanted to check that out, I would highly recommend it. But it seems that numbers, to me at least, are coming into their own. So I have an interesting message. I always sit with my guide and I say, okay, give me a message that kind of dovetails onto the show. And this is and just unusual, firm but gentle. And this is, she showed me a Band-Aid. That's what my guide always shows me, an image first. And I said, a Band-Aid. Okay, where are we going with this? And this was her message. A temporary fix is sometimes referred to as just putting on a Band-Aid. The Band-Aid represents a quick fix, but this does not repair the root of the problem. Why did you need that Band-Aid in the first place? Do your Band-Aids come in the form of substances, of aversion, of diet, or of emotional upsets? When you experience those things, it is because there is something deeper within you that requires more than just a Band-Aid. You learn a lot about the need to heal while on this spiritual path. Why is this? Your existence, your life is not easy. You are faced with challenges and struggles, but each is intended as a lesson and has a purpose. Putting a Band-Aid on the symbolic cuts and scrapes you gather along your journey can block you from learning those lessons. We urge you not to cover up or mask the wounds, but use the healing modalities available to all so that you are able to absorb and understand your soul's lessons. If life's wounds are not attended to, they can begin to fester under those Band-Aids. It is important for you to know that you are not being punished. You are growing. Take off those Band-Aids you have been applying to yourself and expose the wounds to the light and let the healing begin. I thought that was pretty powerful. It was a little bit long for her. She doesn't usually go on that much, but that was a pretty amazing message. Okay, so I have 1 minute to do my card readings, and I picked my standby deck, which is called Healing with the Angels. So let me shuffle these really fast with the intention that the messages will be for all. And I'm going to pick a card for you. I know I'm going to 30 seconds, huh, Chris? Okay, here I go. Okay. Focus. So watch 2 things. Watch where you're putting your focus. Are you focusing on the right things? Should you be focusing more on your spiritual health? Or should you be focusing more on the physical? You decide, but also don't lose focus. Don't forget why you are here. Don't forget what is important. So I thank you. You take care. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.